Have you ever felt the right to be angry?
Today.
Right? Perhaps the subordinate gave you a subpar piece of work. Perhaps that young waiter was being completely unprofessional. Or perhaps your boyfriend bought you chicken rice when what you really wanted was chicken cutlet rice. What would you do when you have the right to be angry? How many of you here would let your emotions show and actually be angry? Great. How many of you here would hide your emotions but secretly feel angry anyway? We have a lot. And how many of you would let your emotions rest before you make a decision? Cool. The point here is we all react differently to such a situation. But tonight, I would like to share an idea with you, and hopefully the next time where you come across such a situation, it will be a thought that will come to your head. A very good evening, Madam President, fellow Toastmasters, ladies and gentlemen. The idea that I would like to share is this. The times where you are least expected to show love are the times where love bears the greatest impact. It's easy for us to love someone else when our life is doing well. But how many of us in this room have the capacity to love when you feel betrayed, unappreciated, or like you are being treated unfairly? Amongst the role models in my life, one of the person who can do that is my father. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not the reason why my father has the right to be angry. Because it's usually my mom who picks up the teacher's call. If I had to describe my dad in one word, it would be foolish. Because that's the adjective you use to describe someone capable of unconditional love. I remember a time where I was 7 years old. I was feeling quite upset because my dad didn't buy me the Chinese New Year shoe this year. I remember walking into the shoe store and there was this shoe right at the top of the shelf. Probably the most expensive pair. But how would I know? I didn't pay for it. So I told my dad, "Wow, Papa, look, that shoe, very nice, huh?" My dad slowly walked out of the store. "You really like that shoe? Come, Papa buy for you." Yes! I felt instantly loved. Luckily that was my dad. If it was my mom, I would walk out of the store empty-handed and crying. But ladies and gentlemen, it was not until many years later did I appreciate that moment. Because that year was 2003. And my dad just lost all his savings in his investments. He had little left than a few $1,000s in his bank. And I remember him sharing with me the shame he felt that year when he had to borrow money to give out red packets for Chinese New Year. But he chose not to let the woes of adult life affect his children. So despite all the stresses he was going through, he pretended nothing happened and decided to buy me that new pair of shoes just like he would in any other Chinese New Year. Looking back, I can only imagine the kind of worries he had in his head when he was making that purchase. Part of which is about our family's finances, and the other part is about how he's going to explain to my mom about this purchase. But there are these little instances where you show love and it's really beautiful. And there are the kinds of love you show over a very long period of time, sometimes being unrecognized, sometimes being unappreciated. And because it's so long, many a times people do not see it. My dad had a really exhausting job. But despite all that, he continues to work hard to take care of my grandparents every day. He did all the little things in their life, like bringing them to cut their hair, buying them food when they feel like eating something, and all the big things when my grandparents had to go to the hospital. He did all that despite knowing that my grandparents have a bias against him. He did all that despite knowing that as the eldest son, much of his goodwill will be taken for granted. From a third person point of view, sometimes you really wonder, he had every reason not to try this hard. But yet, year after year, he continues to do his best and give my grandparents the love he thinks they deserve. And it was that attribute about my dad and the struggles I've seen him gone through because of it that made me think about this topic today. Loving when times are hard. I think it's one of the most difficult and therefore beautiful things that we as humankind has to offer. When someone has the ability to show such an attribute, it's often special enough to stop you off your track, to make you rethink about what is truly important here. And sometimes it has the ability to change the outcome to one that better reflects our humankind. It is the same kind of love that guided the peaceful protests that led to the independence of India, not Hong Kong. And it's also the kind of love you have the capacity to show day after day to that underperforming subordinate, to that underperforming waiter, to give them a chance to learn from their mistake by not breaking down their self-esteem. So ladies and gentlemen, next time when you find yourself having all the reasons to be angry, I do not ask for much from you. You do not need to be the most benevolent lover ever, but what I expect from you is to pause and ponder. Have a second thought about the possibilities a more loving, patient, and kind response could bring if you were to just not let your emotions flow and to do the difficult thing. And with that, I hope that the little efforts that all of us put here would help to create more beautiful moments around us. Thank you.